The next concept we're going to talk about from section 1-1 is increasing and decreasing intervals. And so those are related to the maximum and minimum values. So when a function is increasing, the y values are getting larger. When a function is decreasing, that means that the y values are getting smaller. And so what we can think about this visually as, if it's increasing, it's going to be sloping upward. If it's decreasing, it's going to be sloping downward. And so we're always looking at the graph from left to right to determine this idea. So the arrows of the graph don't really tell us anything about the answer. Remember, the arrows of the graph tell us about the domain and range. So when we're looking at these examples, we're identifying where is the graph moving upwards from left to right and where is it moving downwards. And so if we look at this first function, where if we go from the left, it's increasing. Okay, so this graph is increasing on this side because it's sloping upward. It's increasing. It stops increasing once it hits the maximum value, and then notice that it starts decreasing for the rest of our graph. So what we should notice is that if I draw a line through my vertex vertically, if I draw my axis of symmetry, then I can see the value where this graph changes direction from increasing to decreasing. So if I look at that, it's going through the x-coordinate 0. So that means that my intervals, one of them is going to stop at 0 and the other one's going to start at 0. So remember that the left-hand side of your x-axis represents negative infinity and the right-hand side represents positive. So that means if I look at the values that I have, one interval, the one for increases, is going to go from negative infinity to 0. And then the interval for decreasing is going to go from 0 to infinity. Okay, so this graph was pointing downward because it had a negative a value. So it had a maximum. So notice that when it had a maximum, it was increasing on the left, decreasing on the right. If we look at the graph for part B, it has a positive a value, so it's pointing upward, has a minimum. And so we can see that on our left-hand side, instead of increasing, as I go from left to right, it's starting at the top of the graph and it's going downward. So this side of the graph is decreasing, whereas the right-hand side of the graph is increasing. And so if I draw that vertical line through my vertex, I can see that it's crossing the x-axis at the value 2. And so the left-hand side of my graph, which is the side that's decreasing, is decreasing from negative infinity until 2. And then the right-hand side is increasing starting at 2 until infinity.